in the oven, do you put the door and jar or something? Like the oven?
Frying needs a circulation of air. Otherwise, you're baking it, no matter how low the temperature is. You need a fan, like a convection oven works. A regular oven, I have found, it really doesn't work all that well. You're better off with the sun, or spend $200 or $200-300. That's where they are. And buy a food dehydrator. Yeah.
Where's the best place to buy a food dehydrator?
You can grab one of my cards. I have a link to Excalibur, and you can just order right from there. Yeah. And they come, I think they're in California.
Okay.
And usually they can ship them directly to you, and you can just pick them up at the post office and pay your HST and then ship them direct.
Can you talk a little bit about what you do with your dried tomatoes
Yes.
later? Like,
Yes, now we want to eat them.
yeah.
There's two ways to go about it. You can rehydrate them by just soaking them in water. And that is true of all. I mean, most of us buy dried plums or curly plums, and at night we just put them in water and we have them on our porridge in the morning, whichever way. And the same with tomatoes. Fruit I don't usually rehydrate. But yeah, tomatoes. Now they're also, I add them to soup. When you make a pot of soup, I put them in pasta sauces. When, like in the winter time, I buy organic pasta sauce. I just want a little more oomph. Some of my own tomatoes go in there.
So you just snip them up and
Yep.
dump them in?
Yep. Or keep them whole. Like my pasta tomatoes, the little Roma tomatoes, I usually just quarter. Take both tips off and then quarter, so they are little slivers. And there are slivers in there in that little bag. Other bigger, juicier tomatoes, I slice them. So those would be snipped up. I also make an amazing raw pomodoro sauce, and that is a matter of just raw tomatoes. You reconstitute some, and then put it in the blender with onions and basil and a little bit of lemon. And that I put sometimes on these crackers. So I utilize all of this. The mint usually goes in my green smoothies. Like I have a green smoothie in the morning. That's how I start my day. How else is a girl going to get her greens? So a little bit of mint takes the bite out of kale, for instance. Because most of the greens are a little bitter in flavor, and we're not used to eating bitter flavors. But bitter is so good for you. So now you try to make bitter taste good. You add some lemon and you add some mint. So these are all things that I have in my cupboard. In the spring of course is best. Dandelion leaves, a big bag of dandelion leaves. Even my granddaughter goes around, she starts giving the dandelion leaves. And Becca, here's for the smoothie. And of course, dandelion leaves are stronger in taste than lettuce leaves. So when you're making your smoothies or your fruit leather or your green fruit leather, you compensate by adding very sweet fruits like pears, for instance. Very, very sweet. I have some samples there that I made with green pear leather. I think it was spinach because I have way too much in the garden. And pears. And then I added some ginger, some chia seed for my omega-6s, and I have kind of these little round, little green fruit leathers to chew on when you're traveling.
So you could also use stevia then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a little bag of dried stevia. And you know they've stopped me at the border with this. I said, you're importing something. Oh, sorry. Like, at my daughter's place, Colorado Springs, she had a huge stevia plant, and I dried it there in the sun.
Yeah.
And took it home. But big question.
I grow a lot of cantaloupe, but it's already all at once.
Oh, wonderful.
Can you cook it?
I would think so. I've never done it, but I'd love for you to try that and try it. The other option with cantaloupe, I should think, is to put it in a food processor or a blender to make kind of a soup, and I would then add maybe an avocado to it to make it thicker. You'll never taste it. Or you could put some ground up flaxseed in it, or ground up, or chia seeds. Those are all thickening agents for your fruits. So now you kind of have a little bit of a pudding. You need almost the really juicy fruits. You almost need a thickening agent. And then if you think that you can add some beautiful omega-3s and 6s to your snack food, again, because you don't have to buy, that's bonus, isn't it? Chia seeds, you know, like chia pet? Chia seeds, you can buy them now. And flaxseed, it needs to be either soaked or ground, but I would suggest if you're using it to thicken a very juicy fruit, you should just grind them and then dry them. And then taste it. If you don't like the taste of it when it's wet, you won't like the taste of it even when it's dry. And I think that goes for a lot of things that you mix. Before I dry those, I mean, we've made that recipe enough now. I know I've got it down pat, but when you're experimenting a little bit, taste it first. If it needs more sugar, add dates. I mean, sugar is a big no-no in my house. And so we use dates or naturally sweet fruits like pineapple or whatever, but when our fruit's ripe and sweet enough, or banana. Bananas are really good also to thicken very, very juicy. So I'm going to send this around too. And this is our cookie. We call them crumblies. You can buy them at Nature's Fair. And I put these on the market about 3 years ago, and they're now in about 25 stores all over BC and Alberta. So it's been a bit of an adventure. My daughter said, "Oh, these are so good, you could sell them." So my life's not been the same since. But again, we sprouted buckwheat. You're okay with nuts and seeds, right? So again, we sprouted the buckwheat because it becomes soft. You don't want to put hard things in dried food. And then we soak almonds, we soak sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds, mix it with dates, cinnamon, spread it, dry it. Again, it's a 14 to 16 hour process, but they come out beautiful and crispy, and they have a shelf life. I have some cookies at home as an experiment. They're a year old and they're fine. So they're good shelf life. Yes?
You have a wealth of knowledge in your head up here. For us that don't have any knowledge at all, is there a book or a handbook that we can follow, a basic one that we can use?
Yeah. Actually, if you order a dehydrator from Excalibur, they will send you a book. And there's actually, I see them in health food stores. There are several very good books for sale, and the library has them too. I've gotten books from the library, and they're well written with pictures too. But I found trial and error, and don't make huge batches on your first tries. And the big thing is, and that is my only comment that I have to make about a lot of dehydrating books, it all says like 90 degrees or 110 degrees, and that's cool, but it's too slow, especially when you're doing this in fall, when it's foggy outside, you will get mold. And, that's not cool. So put it high. Think of it in a way as like your turkey, your internal temperature has to be like 350 before it's done, but it takes a long time for that internal temperature to get to that stage. So as long as your food is wet, the internal temperature will not be above 90 degrees. So, this is
Storing. How do you store these things?
How do you store them? Well, this is a fruit leather. I think it's apricot and ginger and banana. And so it was probably a 1/4 inch thick when I poured this on my Teflon sheet. And then I rolled them in wax paper. Because I find it's better to roll it in wax paper than to roll it really tight because it sticks to each other. But this is actually, I think, 2 years old now. But I have it in wax paper and then in a big plastic bag that's in the cool room. I rarely freeze them, except when something is really expensive and I just want to play it safe. So Pardon me? You know, it starts out the edges are drying, and then you just have to feel it. And it's okay for it to be fairly crisp when it comes out of the dryer, because usually there's a little bit of humidity left in the center of it, so if you wrap it up or put it in plastic, the whole thing softens a little bit. I think the official number is 7% moisture, and that's good enough. But who's got a moisture meter at home?
I wanted to ask you, I heard somewhere that plastic leaches toxins, so
Yes.
so what about wax paper and
Wax
stuff?
paper is the better thing for wrapping. Pardon me? Parchment paper is also very good. You cannot dry this on parchment paper. Parchment paper needs to be buttered, like it's for baking. If you dry on parchment paper, it gets very wet and it will break. What I do when I don't have a Teflon sheet is I put it on butcher's paper, like the shiny side, and that works just fine. Yeah. Plastic, yeah, what can I say? It's a curse. But what do? Storing in glass is great. Like most of the time, like things like plums and this, I have everything in old canning jars at home. Either gallon jars, half-gallon jars, or quart jars. And that's how I store long term.
Does it have to be dark?
Preferably.
Dark and cool, but
Yeah.
and sealed.
Yeah. Fruit cellars would be too high humidity unless you've got it totally closed off. Yeah. And to tell you the truth, I've had to throw out a big bag of plums 2 years ago. I had, and then Polly said, I said, where did you guys come from? It happens. It's real food. It has no preservatives. It's not been heated. Stuff happens. But don't get discouraged. If you're
How do you prevent apricots from getting dark?
I'm sorry?
How do you prevent the apricots
Okay.
from getting dark?
You can't. Well, yes, you can. Dipping them in lemon juice, or sometimes they put them in a little saline solution. I don't want to work with salt and fruits, but a little bit of lemon juice is great. You make a lemon juice kind of bowl and dip them in there first. I don't mind the color. And the color intensifies anyways as you're drying it, right? Yes.
Do you use honey as a sweetener?
Sometimes. Yeah. It's not vegan. But to me, that's kind of silly. Honey is the world's most beautiful food. There's a whole pile of really vegan people that I'm thinking, come on. You know? Not my philosophy, but I do use honey. Yes. I also use agave nectar, which is of course a sweetener from the agave plant, what's left over from the tequila factory. And I use stevia, but mostly dates or apples, bananas. Like we have so many sweet fruits, I tend to use fruit as sweeteners. Because the funny thing is the minute you cook fruit, whether it's apples or peaches or apricot, somehow it needs a sweetener, doesn't it? But if you keep it raw, it keeps its sweetness and usually intensifies.